attempts to end the war in Ukraine by giving Alaska to the Russians, about Kherson, and a new uprising in Kyiv. This storm on stage. Watch now on TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to comment on what you found most interesting. We will not give our land to the occupiers, President Zelensky said in his address. This was in response to Donald Trump's statement about the so-called exchange of territories between Ukraine and Russia. It is already known about the meeting between Putin and Trump in Alaska on August 15th, where this so-called compromise will be discussed. The U.S. president stated that some of the territories will be returned and some will be exchanged. Meanwhile, global media are trying to guess exactly what terms of the truce Putin named in Moscow to Trump's representative, Whitaker. Die Welt writes that the American misunderstood the Russian dictator. He interpreted the words about a peaceful withdrawal of Ukrainians from Kherson and Zaporizhzhia as a proposal for a peaceful withdrawal of Russians from these same regions. In reality, though, Putin still wants to seize four Ukrainian regions: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. But he only agrees to a partial ceasefire. The leaders of the Baltic countries criticized attempts to force Ukrainians to give up their territories. Everything known about the possible negotiations will be discussed throughout this episode. 2 people were killed and nearly 20 injured in the suburbs of Kherson this morning when Russians hit a passenger bus with a drone. 2 men died at the scene, and 3 police officers suffered concussions. They were evacuating people when the enemy drone struck the bus again. According to the city council, 16 passengers were injured and hospitalized, most of them pensioners, suffering from blast injuries. They were on their way to shop in the regional center and the village of Inzanern. The oldest injured person is 83 years old and is in extremely critical condition. Among the victims, there is at least one in serious condition.
Among those in critical condition, as you mentioned, is a man. There is also a 66-year-old woman who sustained numerous shrapnel wounds. She has injuries to her chest and other areas, and she is also in critical condition in the hospital. Doctors are fighting for her life.
Nearly 200 people were evacuated today from the Korabel neighborhood in Kherson. In total, 1,411 residents have been evacuated from the danger zone, including 56 children. The authorities announced the evacuation after the Russians damaged the road bridge leading to the neighborhood with shelling. Due to the destruction of the crossing, about 1,800 residents of Korabel have found themselves almost completely isolated. The Kherson military administrations are urging those who remain in the neighborhood to leave. They promise assistance with resettlement, registration as internally displaced persons, and free transportation to other regions of Ukraine. In the morning, the enemy attacked Dnipro with missiles. 3 people were injured there. A woman and 2 men. They were hospitalized and are in moderate condition. Fires broke out at the sites of the strikes, and there is damage on the premises of an enterprise. Kharkiv region came under heavy attack from enemy drones. In the Chuiv district, a fire broke out in an apartment building. 6 people were injured there, including a 15-year-old girl. In the Bohodukov district, there were fires at hospitals overnight due to enemy shelling, and in Balaklia, preliminary reports say 2 people were wounded. In the Kupiansk district, the Russians hit a school and a dormitory, and there are injured there as well. 4 people were killed and 9 wounded in the Donetsk region. In Siversky, 2 civilians were killed and 2 more people were wounded. In Kostyantynivka, the occupiers struck the private sector, beat a local resident, and wounded 5 others. In the city, 90 private houses were damaged. There are also wounded in the Sumy region. In the Serodina Buda community, the Russians dropped explosives from a drone, injuring a 50-year-old man. As a result of drone attacks, there is a wounded person in Sumy. An infrastructure facility was damaged. In Shaska, at least 10 apartment buildings were damaged. There are casualties in Nikopol, Dnipropetrovsk region. Those women were trapped under the rubble of a house destroyed by enemy artillery. A man was also injured. As a result of the evening shelling, several private homes in the city were destroyed. Today, the capital said goodbye to the couple Natalia and Andrei Osintsev. Their bodies were found under the rubble of a building in the Spyadoshinsky district, where a Russian missile struck on July 31st. To pay their last respects, their child saw their parents for the first time after no surgery. And more than a week later in the hospital, the couple's daughter, Veronica, arrived, she miraculously managed to survive during the attack. She was literally blown out of the ninth floor by the blast wave, and the girl got away with just a broken leg. But she only found out she had become an orphan in the hospital. Today, she performed the song, My Dear Mother. Everyone remembers the couple and their friends only with warm words, and Veronica will be cared for by the family's closest friend.
We've probably been friends for more than 20 years. We raised our children together. We know Veronica very well, and Veronica knows me. They ran the business, Nevesko Serednia Natalka, and managed the store, Akvarilica, where they sold art supplies.
In a striking development, in Russia's Tatarstan, Ukrainian drones attacked factories producing Russian Shahid drones. Eyewitnesses captured footage of the strike in Nizhnekamsk. The video shows a drone crashing into an industrial building, followed by an explosion, as well as the uncensored comments of Russians present at the scene. An air raid alert due to kamikaze drones was announced in several Russian cities, including Lubuga, where Shahids are assembled. Because of drone attacks, airports in Vladikavkaz, Kazan, Kaluga, Nizhnekamsk, Samara, and Saratov are temporarily not operating. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupiers. The answer to the territorial question is already in our constitution. President Volodymyr Zelensky made this statement, once again emphasizing that we are defending our land and adding that no decisions about Ukraine can be made without Ukraine.
The answer to the Ukrainian territorial question is already in the Constitution of Ukraine. No one will back down from this, nor will anyone be able to. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. We are ready, together with President Trump and all our partners, to work for a real and, most importantly, lasting peace. A peace that won't fall apart because of Moscow's wishes.
The statement from the Ukrainian president came after it became known that next Friday, a meeting is scheduled to take place in Alaska between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Trump himself wrote about this on his social network, Truth Social, promising to share more details soon. At the same time, he shared details about his upcoming agreements with Putin. This involves the exchange of Ukrainian territories. Some of them will be returned, and some, Trump says, will be traded. TSN's own correspondent, Usha Alyakoshelenko, has more details.
It's a wonderful place. You'll love it. That's how Donald Trump teased the location of his meeting with Putin before revealing his hand. It will be the American state of Alaska. The exact location hasn't been disclosed yet.
The long-awaited meeting between myself, as President of the United States, and Russian leader Vladimir Putin will take place next Friday, August 15th, 2025, in the great state of Alaska. Further details will be announced later. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
It's not a given that this wonderful place will appeal to Putin, the land gatherer. After all, until 1876, Alaska belonged to the Russian Empire, and it was officially sold to the Americans for over $7 million in gold. Alaska was not included in the initial list of possible meeting places for Trump and Putin. Fox News writes that the Russians insisted on Hungary and rejected Italy because of its support for Ukraine. But in the end, for Trump, it will be something of a home game. As for the subject of the agreements, the President of the United States is announcing a certain exchange of Ukrainian territories.
It's complicated.
Actually, it's not easy at all. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some things back, and some things will be exchanged. There will be a certain exchange of territories for the benefit of both sides, but we'll talk about that later, or tomorrow, or sometime.
The position of the president of Ukraine has always been that he will not agree to recognize Ukrainian regions as Russian. Moreover, this contradicts the Ukrainian constitution, and the president simply does not have the authority to make such decisions. Trump said that Zelensky will have to prepare to resolve the issue. Will you recognize?
That he is not authorized to do certain things. I said, well, you'll have to do it quickly, because we're very close to an agreement. President Zelensky needs to get everything he needs, because he'll have to prepare to sign something. And I think he's working hard on it.
A lot of questions remain open. If Trump and Putin reach some kind of agreement next Friday without Ukraine's participation or consent, how will they implement the agreements they've made? And if we're talking about returning and exchanging territories, as Trump suggests, the question arises, what does Putin want in return? The New York Times suggests he is ready to give up some of the occupied territories in exchange for something bigger. Political subordination of Ukraine. Putin seeks to limit Ukraine's military potential, to ban its accession to NATO and, in general, military cooperation with the West, as well as to establish Russian government influence in Kiev. This is exactly what, according to journalists, he will try to achieve during personal contact with Trump. From Washington, United States, Ol Koshelenko, Maxim Shinkarenko. PSN 1+1.
According to CBN News, President Zelensky may take part in the meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska. An anonymous source said that the plans for this summit are not final. But there is a possibility that the president of Ukraine will be involved in it in one way or another. Meanwhile, the publication Axios. It notes that high-ranking Ukrainian officials are also planning to meet with Europeans and Americans in the United Kingdom to coordinate their positions ahead of the Trump-Putin meeting. The talks are reportedly set to take place as soon as this weekend. And the idea itself was born literally the day before during a joint video conference. Ukraine and some NATO allies, journalists write, are concerned that Trump might agree to Putin's terms without taking their positions into account. In Kiev, they say they don't fully understand the details of the Russian proposal or the position of the United States. Putin maintains territorial ambitions beyond Donbass, and he is not preparing the Russian people for any concessions. These are the conclusions reached by an expert from the Institute for the Study of War. They note that the aggressor country is not creating the internal informational conditions necessary for Russians to agree to a settlement without a complete victory. And publications in Russian media and statements from the Kremlin emphasize Moscow's lack of willingness to make concessions. This shows that Putin is not negotiating in good faith. What do you think about the latest international events, about the upcoming meeting between Putin and Trump, which, let me remind you, will take place on the 15th in Alaska? Be sure to write about it in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. And, of course, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, I'll continue with the TSN broadcast. Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region is completely under Ukrainian control. Another attempt by the Russians to enter the city has been repelled. The Dnipro Assault Brigade has published a video showing the city in flames and footage of soldiers defending it. But the defense forces assure that they are still holding it. However, on other sections of the front, the occupiers have advanced. The Russians have captured 2 settlements at once, Novokatsk and Tovst. They have also advanced near Verkhnyo-Kamiensk, Novospassky, and Naikonarivka, as well as in Voskrzynsk, Zelina Muga, and Toretsk. This was reported by analysts from the Deep State Project. At the same time, according to the General Staff, there were 163 combat clashes over the past day. The occupiers attacked most actively in the Pokrovsk direction, launching assaults 45 times. More than a dozen assault attempts were recorded in the northern Slobozhansk and Kursk sectors. There were also 24 attacks in the Lyman direction. They took place near, in particular, Kharkivka, Karpivka, Kolodyazy, Shandry-Holov, and Yampol. Roughly the same number of assaults had to be repelled on the Novopavlivka section of the front. Despite the difficult situation, Our defenders are putting up a worthy resistance, destroying the occupiers' manpower and their equipment. A historic agreement that will put an end to the years-long conflict. Armenia and Azerbaijan, with the mediation of the United States, have signed a peace treaty. The ceremony, attended by Donald Trump, took place at the White House. In addition to peace initiatives, Ilham Aliyev and Nikol Pashinyan agreed to create a transit corridor, which will be called the Trump March for the sake of international peace and prosperity. Notably, Moscow was excluded from the negotiation process, even though it has always positioned itself as the sole arbiter between Baku and Yerevan. How the Kremlin is losing influence in the region, and how the Azerbaijani and Armenian sides managed to reach an agreement. Find out next.
Just a few years ago, scenes like this, meetings between the Azerbaijani and Armenian leaders, would have seemed impossible. Behind them are years of bloody wars, the existence of a separatist region, and ethnic conflicts. At the White House, Ilham Aliyev and Nikol Pashinyan are putting an end to the painful history between the two countries.
We
will turn the page on confrontation, conflict, and bloodshed, and ensure a bright and secure future for our children. That's why I am very happy.
They're signing a declaration, which will still need to be ratified. But in the document, Yerevan and Baku commit to permanently end all hostilities, restore trade relations, and respect each other's territorial integrity. The Armenian side will have to amend the constitution, which was adopted before the collapse of the Soviet Union, to remove any territorial claims against Azerbaijan. The country's prime minister, Nikol Pashinyan, does not rule out holding a referendum for this purpose, but says it will only be possible after next year's parliamentary elections.
I want to thank President Trump and his team for mediating, which led to this breakthrough result between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We reached a major agreement today.
For the President of the United States, who often calls himself a peacemaker, this is a moment of triumph. Against the backdrop of difficult negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, the agreement between Baku and Yerevan seems like a real breakthrough. Aliyev and Pashinyan are showering Trump with compliments and suggesting he be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
35 years is a long time. They were at war, and now they've become friends. And they'll remain friends for a long time to come. It is a great and wonderful honor to welcome everyone to the White House for this truly historic peace summit between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
The peace declaration isn't the only thing Baku and Yerevan are agreeing on at the White House. The parties are signing an agreement to establish the Zengizur Transit Corridor, which is being named after the head of the United States. The Trump route, for the sake of international peace and prosperity. The section in question is 32 kilometers long. It connects Azerbaijan with the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, passing through the Armenian Sayunik region along the border with Iran. In the future, they plan to use this route for a railway line, highways, gas pipelines, and also fiber optic lines. And this will allow for the movement of goods and, eventually, people. For a long time, because of the conflict between the two countries, we couldn't come to any agreement on it. A compromise was the idea to transfer control over the transit to private American companies. In addition, in exchange for peace, Washington lifted its restrictions on defense cooperation with Azerbaijan. The Kremlin was left out of the entire negotiation process. Moscow has always positioned itself as an influential player in the South Caucasus and the sole mediator between Baku and Yerevan. They even plan to station their border guards, FSB agents, in the so-called Zengizur corridor to allow Russian cargo to pass along that route. Now, that opportunity is lost for them. In fact, the Kremlin began losing its foothold in the region because of the war in Ukraine. The Russian army got so bogged down in these hostilities that Baku, seizing the opportunity in 2023, successfully carried out a special operation to return the separatist Nagorno-Karabakh under its control. Turkey, Baku's closest ally, has already welcomed the current peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia. This development has also been positively received by the European Union. And only Moscow remains silent so far. Oksana Kachenko, Victoria Pismena,